Do you ever wonder why your manuscripts keep getting rejected over and over again? Or do you ever wonder if you're just making the most horrible mistakes just because you don't know any better? Well, today I'm going to go over even more picture book newbie mistakes that I've been seeing over and over again with the manuscripts that come in to me. Hello everyone, I'm Pam Calvert and welcome to Picture Book University, where we talk about all things picture book and I help you learn what it takes to become a nationally published picture book author. I can't wait to show you 7 more newbie picture book mistakes. Yep, I'm seeing a lot of them. I'm getting a lot of critiques in and I'm really excited to see your manuscripts. There's a lot of talent out there, but there's also a lot of mistakes being made. If you haven't seen the first 6 newbie writing mistakes, I'll have it linked up here. Now let's get to it. Okay, one of the newbie mistakes I'm seeing is that your manuscript is already storyboarded. So that means, what does storyboard mean actually? Well, I'm going to put a link below. I have on my blog, picturebookuniversity.com, I show you how to storyboard your book. But storyboarding is not for the editors to see, okay? This is for you to see if your book would lend itself well, or your story would lend itself well to a picture book. Picture books are normally either 32 pages or sometimes 40 pages. And so if you don't have enough pictures or enough action going on, then you probably don't have a picture book. You have a short story. And so that's the reason why people want you, or other teachers out there tell you that you need to storyboard your manuscript. But you don't send that out to editors because they're the ones that will storyboard for you. You put it in the correct manuscript format, and I have that format up here. All you have to do is click the link and you'll get to see that. That's in part of one of my other videos that talks about that. But you don't need to storyboard it out. Yay, you don't have to put down what page goes where, because honestly, that happens when we go into the editing phase. You know, when you have an editor editing your work, I mean, you might not even have the words that you had originally submitted coming into the book. So for example, in Princess Peepers Picks a Pet, if you'll notice, there is this nice little tail going on in here. Well, when I first submitted the book, there was no dragon. None. No dragon. There was a frog. I think I just did all the frog. I did a bunch of frogs, and at the end there was a puppy or something like that. Totally different. But then there were some editors, you know, when they sit around and talk at the acquisitions meetings, a lot of them will say, hey, maybe we should do this. Or if it's in the editing phase and it's not quite there yet to take to acquisitions, the team of editors will come in and they will talk about the book and they'll talk about how to make it better. Well, if I would have storyboarded it out, it would have been a total mistake because it wouldn't have happened, because I had to go back and rewrite almost the whole thing. I mean, it basically was the same, but I had to inject a dragon in it. They suggested it. I thought it was a great idea, and I went back and redid that. And so here we have the cute little dragon that I didn't even think of when I sent in the manuscript. Just storyboard for yourself only. Do not send that out. The next newbie mistake is putting illustration notes everywhere. And I mean everywhere. I see so many manuscripts that are constantly putting in illustration notes, and not even just the ones where they're putting in illustration notes instead of writing, which is a new mistake that I talked about before, and it really bothers me, and I know it bothers editors. I remember when I was starting to write picture books, I would hear over and over again from the editors at conferences, don't put in illustration notes unless you had to, okay? I already talked about that. I'm talking about illustration notes for every little thing you can think of under the sun. I constantly get this. You don't need to tell me what's happening. If your story is not visual enough that the editor can see what's happening, then you're going to have to rewrite your story because your story is not visual enough to be a picture book. So if you're always having to put in illustration notes for every little thing, you need to revise you're writing. Okay, the next newbie mistake is such an imperative mistake that I see over and over again, and it goes with show, don't tell. But if you're telling, you're probably doing this, but still some other people might do it anyway. Even if they're not telling, they're still doing it. And it is, they use dull words, dull verbs, plain language. It's just a milquetoast, average, everyday way of speaking or writing. But if you're writing with a passive voice all the time, she is, he is, he was, she walked over here, things like that, where you use these very dull, everyday, average words. They're not really active verbs. Then you're not painting a very good picture, and it's just boring and dull. In Brianna Bright, I kind of show you how she's feeling just by what is happening with these verbs. I don't tell you she's sad. It says, because her father told her, Brianna, my sweet, maybe dancing isn't your talent. So that's upsetting to her. And I'll say, Brianna Bright was sad. I don't say that. Brianna Bright was sad is passive, first of all. Second of all, it's telling. But then I write, with a sniffle, the princess took off her dancing shoes and slouched to her room. She's got a sniffle. That means she's crying. I'm not telling you she's crying, and I'm not just saying she cried. The princess took off her dancing shoes, so that tells you she's giving it up. Didn't say she ran to her room. Those were both boring. I said she slouched, meaning you can just see the defeatedness in this short sentence here. Because I chose active verbs that paint a picture. You must do this. Okay, the next newbie mistake that I see a lot of is repetitive words. And I don't mean that you're using a repetitive word like a style element. I mean that you're constantly using the same word over and over again. You should never have the same word throughout within a couple of paragraphs. If you say walk one sentence, you need to use a different verb on the next sentence. And I would not use walk unless you absolutely have to. Okay, lately on this next one, I've been getting a lot of it, and I know people are like, well, you know, I want to write like this. Well, it's called rhyming, right? You've heard you're not supposed to rhyme. And I think that's a fallacy, because a lot of people will say, well, if it's a rule, you should break it, whatever. If it speaks to you in rhyme, and I understand this because the precursor to Flash, the little fire engine, was this monster truck book that I wrote, and I thought it was cute. My agent liked it. I sent it to my editor, and she's like, I really would like you to take it out of rhyme. So if you can, don't rhyme. Now, there's some great rhyming books out there. My favorite is The Little Blue Truck. That is perfect rhyme, and it goes with the story. And that's the reason why I thought it went with my monster truck story, because you're talking about a bouncy character that might lend itself well to rhyming. But if you, English is your second language, or if you do not have a handle on rhyming, things don't just come quick to you. You're constantly having to count beats, because honestly, if you're a good rhymer, it's gonna be in your head. I was in a rhyming workshop one time, and I'll never forget the author talking about how it's hard for her to teach rhyme because the meter's in her head and she just knows it. And then words just come to her like that don't sound cliche, that don't sound forced. And I could spend a whole workshop on rhyme, which I think I would like to, although I'm not a rhymer, so that's the reason why I kind of would steer away from that. But I understand rhyme. I understand what bad rhyme is, and I've seen a lot of bad rhyme, and it has to flow, and you can't force it, and you can't fudge it. You can't near rhyme. Near rhyming is when a word is near the word, but it doesn't actually rhyme. Like plan and sand. They're near rhymes, but they don't rhyme. Land and sand rhyme. But you cannot force this, and when people do it, they also force meter constantly. Then it's bad. It doesn't work. You need to find a rhythm and a meter that works for your story. And honestly, the best metered rhyme stories are journey stories or young books, toddler books. But if you're trying to force a good story arced book into rhyme, and some of it's good and some of it isn't, it's no good. It just won't work. And you're fooling yourself if you think that you're going to wow an editor with your Dr. Seussian type maybe made up words that you're trying to rhyme with, it doesn't work. It doesn't. If you love to rhyme and you are a poet at heart and you know you have a gifting in this, I would take several classes in rhyming, picture book workshops, whatever you can get your hands on, and practice, practice, practice. Okay, and this next one I see a lot. When I see manuscripts that come in that are about these mundane topics that an average kid would just, this is just an average topic. It's nothing new. It's just an everyday story of maybe a grandpa taking a kid out for ice cream or something like that. It just doesn't resonate enough. Think about this. If a publisher picks up your manuscript and you are a newbie too, so you're unknown, and so your name isn't going to sell the book, first of all. Second of all, and you don't have pictures to sell the book, so you're an unknown author-only picture book writer. Is your story idea worth to the investment of $30,000 to $40,000? Because that's how much it costs to print that many hardcover picture books and all the publicity and marketing that goes into a picture book. They need to get that money back and more. So it's got to be an incredible hook, and it has to really resonate with the child. Is your book good enough for that? Think about it. You really need to put those, those little glasses on and really think, is your book that dynamic and that wow worthy that a publisher would want to spend $40,000 on you? Okay, and this last one is that I see come into me is that you have written this and you haven't gone through your critique group. You haven't let it sit. It's very easy for you to fall in love with your words, fall in love with your plot, and then just want the world to know about it. Because to you, this is your baby, and so you don't have a very good perspective on it. And like I'd said before, you must have a critique group if you're going to be in this business. So if you rush it right out to your critique group and they rush it back in, you do all the little edits and then you throw it out there, that might not be good. You need to let it sit. So like with all of my books, sat before I sent them out. And I thought long and hard before I sent them out. At my stage, I can tell if a picture book is ready sooner than at my early stages. But I'll tell you what, the worst rejections I ever got was when I rushed a manuscript out there and I didn't let it sit. Because what will happen is I rush it out there and then I'm driving down the road and I'm like, that sentence, it doesn't work. Oh, and that plot point. And I think of something way better to put in. And here I've thrown it out there, my one shot, to the editor or the agent. And I'm like, that was stupid. Because I should have let it sit. When you let things sit, more thoughts come to you. And then you can go back and revise. And some people will tell me, hey, here's my manuscript for critique. And then don't feel bad if you've done this because I've done it too. So, but a few days later, I've got a better revision for you. And then 3 days later after that, because usually it takes 3 weeks to a month for me to get back to you. And then they're constantly giving me their new revision before I get to it. I understand that. And so if you do that to me, I get it. But I want you to think long and hard about it. Don't submit your manuscript to an editor or an agent unless you have had let that thing sit at least a month without even revising it. 1 month, just give me 1 month. Okay, so for your homework today, this is for your WIP, and I want you to see if you're making any of these newbie mistakes. Especially check out those verbs and make sure that they are good ones, very active, they paint a picture. Make sure that you are not submitting your manuscripts right away. So if you want to know more newbie mistakes, check that right up here. And down below, I'm going to link some more videos that you might be interested in.